So as I was saying, the Celebrating Communities conversations we've had previously have all been very kind of open, and obviously this conversation is based around walking specifically in East Lothian. So we're focusing on that aspect. That's something that's been talked a lot about in the open conversations that we've had before. So I'll just run through. We thought we'd give this a little bit more of a structure, just to see where we can get with things. So I'll let everybody introduce themselves in a moment, just a quick hello, and then I'll run through what has been talked about so far in the Celebrating Community space, and what people have been kind of their thoughts on walking in East Lothian. I'll open the floor to any updates. I know there's some activity already happening, and I know there's some new things that people are doing. So anything that anybody wants to kind of talk about or update everybody on, more than welcome to. I thought as well after that we can do some, we've got some questions that myself and Fiona thought might be useful to look at, to kind of just, narrow the conversation slightly because it is such a wide topic, and just kind of look at the connection between regional and local sort of walking resources that are in place at the moment. That can either be in breakout rooms. I know there's a fair few of us, so I mean, you can have a think about that, and I'll ask you guys in a bit whether you'd rather just do it as a group conversation or if breakout rooms would be helpful. And then we can have a little look after that conversation about what we think might be useful to do next. So I will let you introduce yourselves. I just thought kind of a quick hello, sort of what hat you're wearing, what organisation or where you are, kind of locally within East Lothian might be helpful. I'll just say hello to those that don't know me already. I know there's a couple of faces here that I've not met before. So I'm Maya, and I've been working with Sue in Dementia Friendly East Lothian for about 10 months now. And really excited to be working on the Celebrating Communities project, which we sort of launched in January this year. And that's really just looking at celebrating the things that have been happening locally within the last 12 months, and then kind of just really trying to build on those great things that the communities have been doing. So that's me. I'll pass over to Libby.
Hi everybody, I'm Libby Morris. I'm the chair of North Berwick and Bloom, so I'm really just representing North Berwick rather than the whole of East Lothian. But the last time we met I talked about the maps project that we are doing, which is to develop a walking map of North Berwick. I think since, well really since the last year when lockdown first started, everybody's been walking so much more, and I've discovered loads of paths I didn't even know existed in North Berwick. So we thought it would be helpful to have these all documented, so if people were wanting to leave their cars at home and cross across the town, they could do it more easily. And particularly for people who have been sheltering and shielding and staying at home and maybe feeling not very confident about going out, we thought a map might be helpful, particularly if it's things like benches and viewpoints. So that's really why I'm interested in speaking to you all and hearing about how this can fit in with everything else that everyone's doing.
Thank you. Laurie?
Hi, I'm Laurie Track. I'm Community Development Officer for two centres, Longniddry Community Centre and the Pennypit Centre in Preston Pans. It's the Longniddry Community Centre that's done quite a lot for walking groups, working with Sue Northcote originally, looking at dementia-friendly activities. So Jackie's with us today as well, and she can tell you more about what the staff at the centre are doing, also exploring now buddy walks. So I think we're quite excited about how we can develop, especially as things get better after the COVID restrictions that we've had.
Thank you. Jackie, do you want to say a few words?
Yeah, I'm Jackie Burton. I'm the centre head at Longniddry Community Centre. We currently are running, well, not at the moment because of lockdown, but we have been running 2 walks, Paths for All, and all 4 members of the staff are trained walk leaders. So yeah, so we're hoping to develop more. Yeah.
Thank you. Roseanne?
I'm from Dementia Friendly Trinent. We don't actually have any walking things here, but it is something. I had great plans for lockdown of things to start doing in Trinent, and it's all gone. So I'm thinking walking could be of interest to some people. So
That's really good to know that that's a sort of gap, I guess, that something could be done there. Thank you. Roger?
Yeah, I'm Senior Countryside Ranger with East Lothian Council. So we're covering the whole of East Lothian. Yeah, we used to do lots of walks, but at the moment we aren't doing any, and it doesn't look likely to continue for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, that's a massive shame. I know you were talking about the great walks you were doing last time, so it'd be good to hear more about that stuff later. Shawna, sorry.
Hi everyone, I'm Shawna Cunningham. I'm the Move More coordinator for East Lothian. So that's a Macmillan funded programme for people living with and beyond cancer. Some of you I know and some I don't. So hello to those that I don't and do, all of you. So I have been working actually with Parveen in line with the walking aspect of Move More, because rather than setting up new walks initially, when Move More started back in 2019, which feels like a lifetime ago now, they were already established. So I've kind of teamed up with Parveen, and some of the walk leaders have done Macmillan friendly training so that some of the walks could be more accessible for people living with cancer too. But obviously, as you just heard from Roseanne, if there's gaps, then we'll be looking at how that can be filled out a little bit more. But at the moment, the demand for the walks through Move More would be more from the existing walks, and hopefully after we come out of lockdown and things start to open up again, there'll be more interest in it than we've had up to this point as well.
Thank you. Parveen?
Hi everyone, I think I know everybody here, which is great, but just a wee reminder, I'm the Age and Well Coordinator for East Lothian. So my remit is obviously to promote physical activity for older adults in East Lothian. A big part of my remit is walking, hence why I'm here today. So I currently have a bank of about 45 volunteers who run about 10 health walks across East Lothian, and I'm always looking to expand, but also kind of joining groups like this to kind of support, but also, as I mentioned, expand and do more walks. I know, for example, what Roseanne was saying, there's definitely a gap there. We don't currently have a walk in Trinent, and that's something I would definitely love to look at doing. So yeah, it'll be great to hear what everyone kind of has in mind for this group going forward. So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. Kirstine?
Hello, I'm Kirstine. I work for Carers of East Lothian. We support unpaid carers across the county. Traditionally, Carers of East Lothian has done a kind of an annual walk during Carers Week, which is June, with Richard English, who's a colleague of Roger's, one of the East Lothian Countryside Rangers. And Richard supported us during the pandemic by doing 2 recorded walks that got quite a lot of attention on our social media feeds. In terms of our contribution and interest, I think a lot of people haven't had the kind of social leisure, health and wellbeing activities that they were used to, and walking is actually one of the things that is probably going to become most accessible most quickly. So really keen to find out what's happening and how we could support and signpost unpaid carers and the people they care for, if appropriate.
Thank you. And Fiona?
Hi everyone. I'm Fiona, and I've been working with Maya and Sue for probably the last 10 months on various different projects. Sue's asked me to get involved in the walking group and a golf project we're hoping to kick off maybe later in the year. And I'm just looking to make lots of different connections with you all. And I think I've met a lot of you, but there's a few new faces, so hi.
Thank you. Please add anything into the chat box. I'm just doing a quick note because it's easier there than anywhere else. And apologies if I've not quite written what you've said exactly, but it's just a quick note. So I will go through quickly what we've talked about so far in terms of walking. And then we can go from there and see if there's anything specific that people have come into this conversation to talk about. Give me 2 seconds and I will share my screen here. So far, can everybody see that okay?
Mm-hmm.
So far the conversation, we've talked a lot about kind of what helps with self-directed walking and with people just getting out and about day to day. Maps is obviously one of those big topics. There's a lot of different maps that we've heard about that are available. And obviously Libby was talking about the work that they're doing in North Berwick to kind of remap the pathways there. That's something that we're kind of wondering how that will help to bring things together, because there's so much information out there, but we're not sure kind of locally what people use or what's useful. Benches is another big topic, and we've talked a lot about the importance of benches. They're not just a seat. They're kind of a focal point, somewhere that people can aim to get to, very much a social point as well for people going for a walk. We've talked about kind of the issues and the different areas surrounding benches, so the funding of benches, where they'll be placed, if there was new benches put in place, and then the upkeep of them as well. There's lots of work already happening in this area that I know of. I'm sure there's other work as well that I don't know of, so that'd be interesting to hear if anybody else has any updates there. In terms of audio and visual, that was quite an interesting conversation. Somebody was talking about sound poles and using the auditory aids to kind of enhance the walking experience. So you'd walk up, press a button, and you'd get that sort of story to go alongside your walk. I mean, that's obviously a little bit similar to signage, which is something that's really, really helpful. And there's been some conversations about getting some more signage put in place along various paths. Roger, is that your hand up? Oh, sorry. Thought you wanted to say something. I know you are probably the guy to talk to about signage as well. So if anybody's interested, that's probably something we could chat about. Walking groups is sort of the second area of walking, I guess. So we've got all sorts of health walks, buddy walks, themed walks, and walking challenges. And of course, I mean, some of you will be able to tell us all a lot better what walks there are and where to find the information. I know there's so much information on various websites, and I know a lot of you are doing a lot of that work already. So that's really interesting. And then, of course, there's the big issue about COVID and how that works with walking groups and how it might work when things start opening up again. And then within all of this, of course, we really want to think about the dementia-friendly walking and the consideration around that. Like I said, Kaylee did send over some great resources around dementia-friendly walking, so I will share those as well. And it's just kind of good for us, I guess, for me especially, to just always be mindful of integrating that into anything that I'm doing, and if we're going to be setting up any walking groups. So some emerging sort of projects that have been talked about within this space, but I'm sure there are many more, is of course the North Berwick walking maps that Libby was talking about. There's benches being put in place. That's a picture of one bench in North Berwick that the Community Council have funded, and they've redone the path, I believe. And in Durlton and Aberlady, I know there's work going into plans for benches there as well. Hilary, who is with the North Berwick Health and Wellbeing Group, she might come along later, but she has been talking about a walking festival that's primarily going to be North Berwick based, but it'd be interesting to know if there was any appetite for that on an East Lothian wide scale. I don't know at this point if anybody's got anything to add, anything they want to ask, or kind of any updates from yourselves of sort of any projects or anything else that I might have missed within those points.
I suppose just to add that since our last meeting, the Fringe by the Sea Festival has been announced, and they usually incorporate loads of walks, I mean, particularly from the Countryside Rangers and other things as part of their programme. I know, again, it's just North Berwick, but there will be lots of themed walks planned, I think. Or Roger probably knows more about them.
We haven't heard anything from Fringe by the Sea. Normally the organiser gets hold of me, ask if we will contribute to the programme, but I've heard nothing yet.
Have you not? Because I think they're just sort of just launching it now, so there's sort of planning things.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. I'm sure for Hilary to maybe link into if she was wanting to do a walking festival around that time. So I'll mention it to her as well. Okay, if nobody has any more updates, then there was Nick, I think, has just joined us as well. Hi Nick, how are you doing?
Hello. I'm good, thank you. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, can hear you fine, thank you. We were just talking about some of the topics we've been chatting about around walking in East Lothian previously, and there's a couple of things that are coming out of the conversations so far, including maps, benches, and potentially a walking festival. I don't know if there's anything that you know of that's on your radar that you want to add.
Not currently. I'm thinking we do have a walks map that covers the North Berwick area that we produced last year, and we've got a whole load of walks leaflets and things available online.
Okay.
You're looking at primarily the North Berwick area just now?
No, it just so happens that that's a lot of the information that's come out with the conversations East Lothian wide, but yeah, a lot of the stuff that we're hearing about is around that kind of North Berwick coastal area. So it would be very interesting to hear if there's other things going on in other areas. So I guess that kind of takes us. Sorry,
I can certainly send you a link to all of the walks information that we have online.
Brilliant.
Hopefully it'll be helpful.
That'd be really helpful. These were a couple of thoughts that myself and Fiona thought might be helpful unless there's people that have come into this conversation with something specific they really want to talk about around walking. These are kind of just some kind of questions that we thought might be useful to look at. So what's working or what can be improved in the area? I know obviously there's a lot of people here that are East Lothian wide generally, but I'm not sure if there's anything that you know of or have kind of spoken to people in local areas. How the regional work translates into local communities, how that kind of that trickles down, and how that information is passed through. And then would it be helpful to kind of capture and signpost these resources or information for each area? I mean, that might already exist. Please tell me if it does. But something that people can go to, you know, I want to go for a walk in Haddington, and then they can find out everything from that perspective, from a local perspective. Or if there's anything else that you think would be helpful that we can look at as an output or something that we could do to really enhance or make this work better. So I will just stop sharing my screen. Kirstine?
Just whilst you were speaking, two things kind of popped into my head. One was about the beach wheelchairs, just kind of thinking about accessibility. I don't really know what's happening with them more and how many communities. I think they're in North Berwick, but I don't know if they're in any other communities in East Lothian. And the other thing,
East Lothian, they are, yeah.
So sorry.
Sorry, there are some at the camps at Port Seton.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. And the other thing was, I think there are a couple of kind of like cycling for all groups where people are taken out on trishaws. So if they can't walk but still want to, you know, feel the sea breeze in their hair type thing, they's kind of offered a little rickshaw or trishaw ride, and that might be a nice thing to include to, again, broaden the spectrum of who can take part in a walk.
That's really helpful. Do you want to open should we open the conversation, just us? It's not that big a group, unless anybody really would think it would be useful to go into breakout rooms to have a chat.
We're a small enough group, aren't we?
Yeah. So I don't know if there is, I mean, Roseanne, you were talking about there's no walks at the moment in Trinent. Is that something that you think that would be really useful?
I think it would be, yeah. It was just really to see if, is there one already or one that can be tweaked, or really what there is, like, you know, like a walk map.
Does anybody, I don't know if anybody knows of anything in Trinent.
We did produce a map of walks around Trinent, but I think it's probably about 10 years ago. It is still available online, but it could certainly do with that being updated.
There was a project with the N Area Partnership Project for Trinent, or for the Forside Ward anyway, probably as it used to be, as opposed to what it is now, but it involved quite a lot of input from some of the children's groups in there, actually going out and mapping past and saying what's there and all that sort of stuff. And it's never been completed, really. Not to anybody's satisfaction yet, and now we've gone through COVID and things, so that there may still be a possibility that some of that information could be more available. I think some of the groups are finding it difficult to get out and do some of the work, and we were trying to make it that it wasn't the rangers doing all of it, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
So we were trying to get other people out doing other bits and pieces, and there were groups that had volunteered to go and do this, but some of them were being quite effective and others weren't. So it's still up in the air. Richard, actually, one of my team, and Lee, the other one, the two of them were involved in the project, so they'll have a bit more information than I've got. I mean, exactly what stage it got to, but yeah.
What were those two names? Sorry.
So it's Richard English and
Richard English.
Lee McCrum.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, Lee's a Trinent resident anyway, so.
Could I just ask Roger and Nick about all the information that you've got already on the website, because I think our North Berwick project started because North Berwick's expanded so much, and well, it's still expanding as we speak, and there's lots of paths in the new developments which aren't on any of the maps. But you know, having everything electronically is obviously the way forward, but there's still lots of people who are maybe, you know, the dementia friendly type of community that we're trying to reach out to, who would still need a paper map. And I'm just wondering about linking up what you've got on your website with some of the new things that we're producing. I don't know if you've got any comments about it, or is the way forward just simply to be electronic?
Personally, I much prefer a paper leaflet, and I think most people do when they're out walking. You know, it's all very well having something you can look at on the laptop or take out on your phone, but it's so small. And then if you lose signal or something like that. Generally, though, what we do, we will produce a leaflet with funding from an area partnership or something, and then the leaflet runs out and there's no funding to reprint it, which is always a bit of an issue. And the idea with them being online, I suppose you can print them out yourself, but they will be slightly smaller and not as good quality. But always keen to explore this. But then again, there's always the issue of where do you store all these leaflets? I know I got a load done for the Gifford area, and I think they're sitting in a garage in Haddington at the moment, holding up space. I'm not sure. We did recently do the North Berwick one, and it was somebody else actually who was involved with that. I don't know whether there's a stock held somewhere or if they've all been distributed.
I don't know. I did see one last year. I think it was in the library, but of course the library's closed now. But we were certainly proposing to do our one as a published paper map for those reasons that you mentioned, so people can take it with them when they go out for a walk. But potentially an electronic version as well that would link in or have links with all the other things that are around, like the ones you've done. We're just at the very first stages at the moment. Oh, thank you very much. That's really helpful.
You see a link there. That's the East Lothian Countryside Volunteers web page, and on there you can see all the walks leaflets that there are. There's core paths, plan maps, and a series of sheets of descriptions of walks that I started to produce when I had a little bit more time on my hands. So great. As far as I'm aware, that's all of the walking resources that we have in East Lothian, all on that one website. But actually, one thing I always find is an issue is if you walk into a library or a shop or something, you see a leaflet and I'll pick that up, and you're capturing people who aren't actually looking necessarily for a walks leaflet, but they just happen to see one. Whereas on the internet, you really have to be searching for something in order that you find it. And I just don't know how many people are finding the walks leaflets. If you Google walks leaflets of East Lothian, do you end up on the page?
Yeah, the one thing that I think a lot of places have found is that in the last year, our town has developed a whole lot of street networks, and a lot of the people who might potentially need something like a map, but who wouldn't go down to the library, are on delivery routes and can, you know, be included in deliveries of things like maps. So I expect every other town will have their equivalent networks. It's all set up by community volunteers in the last year.
I think something else that we've always thought is any new housing developments, there should be sort of welcome pack for people buying the houses, which should include a map of all the walks, active travel routes, and information about public transport and all that sort of thing. It's amazing how often you speak to somebody who's lived somewhere for 5 years, and yet they still don't know where the local paths are.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. I know all the new houses in North Berwick, they're nearly all built with two, you know, they've got 2 parking spaces for 2 cars outside each one.
What are your experiences, Christine and Parveen? Because I know, and maybe Shawna as well, I know you have a lot of kind of walks that you're kind of advertising. Do you use online mainly, or do you go down the leaflet route as well?
Just for like advertising the walks?
Yeah.
We do everything really. We do, like, I go into the libraries when I could, obviously, and give out posters to put up. social media. I do a lot of emails, which I'm sure a lot of you are kind of in my distribution lists. So I kind of, you know, tackle all avenues. That's kind of the way that I do it personally.
I guess when it comes to the actual walks, that really depends on the walk leaders who choose the routes. And there may be a selection that are used regularly, but I don't know if there's no printed maps of those walks, are there?
We have some. Again, I think this is whether, I think that they're very much up to date, I think, but I think it's maybe back in the day, volunteers had actually come together and created the map themselves. And they've, you know, obviously supplied that to myself and my predecessor, and we've just kind of used them going forward, and they all seem to be happy with them. They're very straightforward as well, and I'd be happy to share them. That's not a problem as well.
In terms of Carers of East Lothian, really what we do is kind of either team up occasionally with, you know, doing a ranger-led walk for us for a particular event, either in the summer during Carers Week or at Christmas as a Christmas event, or then signposting to people like Aging Well when, you know, carers come to us, you know, looking for activities or support or ways to promote their health and well-being.
Thank you. I don't know if that's helpful for anyone. I think that's obviously there's the difference, isn't there, between the group walks maps and then the self-directed walks. I don't know if anybody has any kind of experience of trying to find walks, and I'm not quite sure what they have going on in their area, or if that's not an issue at the moment. I'm not sure if you kind of heard of anything.
Maya, I was going to suggest, I wonder if it might be worth our while all coming together and actually putting on a piece of paper, so what is actually available right now, and then looking at where the gaps are. And, you know, that might show us and identify that there is a gap in Trinent, like Roseanne's saying, because nobody really seems to know of really many walks in there. I wonder if that's maybe something we should do. You know, I can come forward and say, this is what I'm offering. Jackie at Longridge can come forward and say, this is what we're offering, you know, and blah, 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 blah. And then we can maybe kind of like map it out and see, okay, we've got maybe 3 walks in Haddington. We don't really need to focus on that area. Let's maybe look at Trinent instead for the time being. I don't know, just an option.
Yeah, no, that's a really good idea. And I mean, kind of pulling together those resources and just being able to identify the gaps is kind of, that was one of the sort of outputs that we thought might be really useful. So if that is something that everybody here thinks that would be great, then yeah, I think that that's something, you know, that can be quite easily done, and it would really make it a lot clearer, because it seems to be that there's kind of things happening. But I mean, I'm just looking in from somebody that isn't involved with the walking scene, so I didn't know if it was just because it was me, but if that is something that's needed to kind of have identify gaps, then that would be, yeah, I would be quite happy to do that. I don't know if that's something that we could do here just now, or if it's easier to do that in a kind of email thread. What do you think?
Probably maybe an email thread, and as someone we could like accumulate it all into like a Word document and maybe try and map it out somehow that way. And I was just thinking as well, so say for example we did identify a gap in Trinent, is your thought going forward for, so if we end up putting in a walk in Trinent, who's going to kind of oversee that? Is that going to be us as Celebrating Communities, or is that going to be a separate organisation? That's something we'll obviously need to think about as well. And then obviously the training aspect, volunteers, who's going to manage the volunteers? I know that's a little bit further down the line, but just something to maybe think about ahead of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that would obviously depend, I don't know, Roseanne, what you think, but depend on the people there and what they're wanting to do.
I don't think it's something Dementia Friendly Trinent just now could do on their own. We'd maybe be looking to sort of help or supports somebody else, you know. I think that could all be discussed at the time, sort of thing. It's
yeah. That would be just part of the process. Well, I mean, that's what kind of Celebrating Communities is here to do as well. While we're here, is to support kind of any projects like that, or just to try and get something like that off the ground and identify where that help could be. So, no, I think that would be really great. Libby?
Can I just ask Roseanne, does Trinette still have a Bloom group, an In Bloom group? Because they might potentially be able to help. We've sent lots
I think, well, obviously it's gone a bit quiet. I think not just coronavirus, but Liz Hutchison, she packed in, so I think it's been a bit quiet. And she's packed in. So in theory, yes, it's still going, but I don't know what the other groups are like, but just now, because COVID, there's not a lot happening.
No, that's really why I was suggesting, because we've got lots of volunteers with nothing very much to do. So that's why we started the Walking Maps project.
And I would imagine, I know the shops, you'll sort of paid for the flowers, and I'm trying to think, there's not that many open in the Trinette High Street. So
I was just thinking you could maybe use some of the volunteers to help you with.
Yeah.
I was just going to add in relation to that as well, about how, you know, thinking of what Parveen said about sort of future proofing and looking at, you know, obviously in these times things are a little bit different, and there will be things popping up and have popped up that may not continue moving forward and may not be a staple. So the issue with all of this information gathering is always, where does that live and who keeps it updated, and how that can be a centralized point. Now, obviously, Nick's pointed to where all the walks are on that website, and like you said, trying to find those, whether that would come up in a search or not, who knows. But I'm just thinking about how we could use centralized systems or organizations as a point of reference. And I guess what came to my mind was the Volunteer Centre East Lothian, now that sort of changed, and it's going to be a volunteer hub, and I guess an information point. Would that be somewhere that could be useful to have and live, where all this information could live, so to speak? Or has anyone got any ideas of where it might be useful?
I mean, I agree. I think that's something that's always coming out of conversations about putting together a what's on, or a list of activities that are currently happening. So it's a really good
end up with lots of the same thing that are all at different stages of being up to date based on who's been looking after it and where the information's coming in. I think working with people living with cancer and working with people in the health service, I find that happens a lot. You know, there's pockets of information, so the consistency isn't there. And I'd say that would be really important, as to at what place do we, you know, can we house all of this where it's a go-to. And I guess Path for All is another one that a lot of people would go to. So maybe that's somewhere we would enhance with more local walks. I don't know. I guess they'd have to be under their remit as well.
I think initially it would be really helpful, even if it wasn't something that was going to be continuously updated for kind of an information point, but just to be able to identify what is currently happening and where the gaps might be, as a kind of an initial overview. But because I do agree, I think that task of having a very much up to date, it's something that I'm sure is already kind of trying to be done, potentially, and I know it is quite a task. So we can, it'd be really, really interesting to pull together what's happening currently. I don't know about keeping that running up to date and housing it, if you like. But if there was anybody here that was, you know, up for the task, then feel free to to say so. But as far as celebrating communities, I think it would be really, really great to just identify those gaps and be able to put something in place to help there.
Does the council produce maps? I'm sure I've seen for East Linton and the other villages. I mean, I've got a paper copy of the one for East Linton because that's where I live, but I've seen online like maps that you can download with local features and the paths, or I don't know who's responsible for that. I don't know if that's the Countryside Rangers, Roger, or
No.
No.
We've got, well, we had, as Nick said, we had leaflets for much of the areas of East Lothian. Some like the Trinent one, which was a long time ago, and these have been distributed, and there may not be any left. That we've got spares of some kicking around, but to be honest, Nick, I don't know where half of them are. So, and a lot of them are out of date.
Yeah, I think most of them are used up, run out. I just realised actually we do have a more recent Trinent one because the Foreside Area Partnership did a leaflet with Jennifer, which I've completely forgotten about, but I just saw it when I was looking at that link that I've just shared. The East Linton leaflet was done by the community themselves. The first edition I think I helped them with many years ago, and they keep updating it. Each area partnership, I don't think Dunbar's done a leaflet, but all the other area partnerships have done leaflets covering quite large areas. And there was one in Preston Pans, that was a local community group that produced it. So there's a whole variety. There's some Winton Estate that's been produced by a private estate, but they're all on that website that I linked to. So yes, I mean, I know in North Berwick there used to be a little booklet that you could buy for 50p in the days when there was a tourist information office there, and that was just a really keen local walker who produced that himself with a number of walks in it. So it's different to different places. It just depends. Gullen, again, that was done by a local rambler who just decided the village needed a leaflet. So I think very often they work with the local community council or the area partnership to get funding. But the council, we did originally produce walks leaflets for most of the settlements in East Lothian, but that was a number of years ago, and that funding has sadly dried up since.
But it sounds like currently maybe you hold, or East Lothian community volunteers or countryside volunteers hold the most developed database, so to speak, of all the maps that are available, whoever's produced them. Is that correct?
Yes. I shouldn't slag off the council website, but the council website's not very friendly as far as uploading maps and downloading them, and I wanted something that's a bit easier. I produced these individual walk sheets for the local access forum. It was a project they wanted to undertake, but then for some reason we couldn't store them on the council website. So it was just easier to work with the countryside volunteers and put everything on there. So now I consider that the most up-to-date sort of archive of all the leaflets that are available, and I really try and link to that rather than storing some leaflets on Visit East Lothian, some on East Lothian. But the problem is this one website, it just needs the person who's a volunteer who's arranged this website, it just needs him to leave the area or give up, and then we've lost all of that. So I don't think there's a perfect way of actually doing it.
No. I again, just thinking, would the libraries be a useful contact for that as a backup? You know, we don't want to recreate if there's this database and it's working, maybe it needs to be publicized more, but you know, so that it doesn't rely on one volunteer who might fall ill or move out, or
Yes, ideally. I mean, the problem is the libraries are all part of East Lothian Council again, so they would tend to say, well, it should all be stored on the council website. I mean, I'm fingers crossed the East Lothian Countryside Volunteers, somebody else will take over if this person gives up. And it's the best option at the moment. But certainly as far as paper copies, the libraries are very handy because I just deliver a whole load of boxes to the library headquarters and they then distribute them around. And similarly, if we wanted to have a poster with if you want more information about walking, go to this website. We could do something, work with the libraries with something like that.
Mm-hmm. I know we did ask the libraries, when we were dropping some of these things off, to keep copies behind the desk as well. So if they ran out, they still had, library-based copies that people could access that stayed in the library. But whether that's still the case, I don't know.
Yeah, there was Wilma from the library was talking about the just kind of the what's on boards and the leaflets and kind of keeping all of that up to date. So I think they've got kind of big plans to keep going with that stuff when they reopen, and very much kind of creating more of a focus on what's on board as well. But I think leaflets, is something that people kind of go to the library and they've got those leaflets there and it's very useful, but obviously while it's closed, not very helpful. I don't know if Jackie, if you've got anything to add about what's happening is it Longnidree that you're based?
Yeah, I'm based in Longnidree. We've got, at the moment, we've got 2 pastoral walking groups. One on a Tuesday, one on a Thursday. Obviously, they're not operating at the moment. Because we've got 4 staff members that have done the walk leader training, we actually operate 2 routes each of those 2 days. So we do a longer walk and a shorter walk for those that aren't quite able to manage the longer walk. And I think we've got a core of about 20 routes maybe now that we can, offer within Longnidree and the surrounding immediate area.
Okay. Is there any talk of sort of benches in Longnidree?
Well, there are some benches dotted about Longnidree and down, obviously, at the beach. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, it's quite interesting. It'd be also interesting to find out, I guess, from people locally. I know there's obviously, as I said, there's work already happening in some areas about putting in new benches, but I know that's something there's a lot of interest in. Yeah, Laurie?
And Maya, I thought your questions at the beginning would be quite useful to actually, when we can get the groups together again for their social bit at the end, to ask them what their thoughts are about this. And the other thing that occurs to me are the routes that we have been taking to raise awareness about which would be perhaps more dementia friendly, like things were pointed out to us that we weren't aware about at the start, and how that can be developed. And potentially also buggy walks. These are other areas for development. So, and it has to be within the capacity as well of what the staff can do, because also, if they're directed walks, when we tried it before some years back, it didn't really work because we didn't have the sustainability of volunteers. But perhaps when you were talking earlier about where to hold information, that if volunteers are going forward for the training, as part of that training at the end, they could be asked if they'd like to go onto the East Lothian volunteer database, if they're interested in doing it, and what areas might they, like to work in. So that's something else. But I know for myself, I would always go to Pastoral as the go-to place, to find out either guidance or further information. But I thought the information from Nick, that link is going to be very useful. I look forward to getting onto that link. So thanks for that.
Thanks, Laurie. And that's some really good points as well. There's obviously things that we can signpost in various walks, such as which ones are more dementia friendly, and then also all the information about the beach buggies, etc., and kind of have it in one centralized place would be really useful. And I know there's I'm still to talk to Volunteer Centre East Lothian, but I know that they have got a kind of a task force in the making. So I'm sure when it comes to walking, there'll be a lot of kind of volunteers willing and wanting to do that walking training as well. So that'd be interesting to hear about. I don't know if this is coming up for the hour, so I don't know if anybody's got anything else that they wanted to chat about, or if there's anything specific you want to ask. I think it's been really helpful to hear from you, Parveen, about putting together the resources, and obviously all of the information that we've got from yourself as well now, Nick. So if everybody wants to be involved in an email trail after this, I can kind of start that off, and if anybody's got resources to add, then I can kind of work on putting that together, and then we can see where we get with identifying gaps from there.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound okay to everybody?
Yeah, one thing I just want to mention is, so I'm just thinking, coming out of obviously lockdown, when the restrictions change, I know just from starting the walks in the past year, we've had so many people wanting to get back, which is fantastic, but then we've obviously got to consider those that don't, and I think that's maybe where buddy walks maybe might come in handy, and that's something that we don't actually offer as Aging Well, but it's something that I'm thinking about potentially looking at, and I think it might be good to obviously mention that here in this group, because I think a lot of people have mentioned it already. I know that obviously Laurie had mentioned it, Kirsty, I think you'd maybe mentioned it too. Yeah, so if anyone wants to kind of maybe look at that as well going forward, I would be happy to maybe have a chat with you out with the group or with the group as a whole, because I think going forward that's something we really need to consider as well. Those people that maybe are a little bit apprehensive and just want that one-to-one walk rather than a large group, because I know that last year some people did voice a concern about being in a group, but I did obviously assure them that from Paths for All, we were allowed up to 30 people in a group walk. I personally don't think that. I think that's quite a lot number-wise. Luckily, we never got that high, but yeah, I think it's just something we need to consider going forward. Sorry, my doorbell's going. I'm just going to quickly go and get that. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
I was just going to add to actually what Parveen just said, obviously working with people living with cancer as well, and if people have been shielding, or if people have been at home a lot more than they would normally be anyway. So I know some people have been super motivated to get out and about, but some haven't. So there has been some deconditioning happening. So buddy walks would be great for just being able to pitch it for people at where they're at, so they're not feeling under pressure to keep up with others on longer walks and whatnot. So you're starting, you're able to do it, for shorter periods of time, depending on the person and their needs as well.
I'm thinking, Jackie, that you might be able to contribute to this, because you've done quite a lot of work on some of the practicalities and the issues to consider, like the kind of risk assessments and other guidelines. So that would be, I think, useful to pool our information together on that.
Yeah, I mean, I just emailed out last week to our current walkers to do buddy walks for any of them that weren't walking now, but most of them seem to be going out walking anyway, and we've only had one come back who said she'd like somebody to go and do a buddy walk with us. So at the moment I'm just pairing her up with one of the members of the staff to get her going walking again. So yeah, but Paths for All are actually very good with their risk assessment template that they actually already have in place, and we just use that as our basis, and then we add our own information to it.
Yes, my point, I think, is that it's quite comprehensive, and it flags up things that you wouldn't necessarily think about in the first instance. So it'd be quite good to share that.
Yeah.
And I guess we'll see as well, as we do come out of lockdown, if there's any additional guidance that comes out around physical distancing, etc., because obviously with the new variants and things, we don't quite know how that's going to manifest yet, so that could affect those existing templates as well, the risk assessments. We might have to adapt things a wee bit, hopefully not, but we'll see.
That's really valid point, Shawna, because I think Pastoral are now on like version 6. They've had to edit it so many times. So yeah, that's definitely something to consider. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. I think that's been a really productive conversation for myself anyway. Hopefully for everyone here has gotten something out of it. I will share the recording and the note that's in the chat box, and if anybody's got anything to add, feel free. And then I'll also start that email trail just to see where we can get with finding any gaps within East Lothian that would benefit from some walking input from ourselves. But yeah, thank you all so much, and I'll let you guys go. It's been really, really lovely to see everybody.
Thank you.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Thanks very much.
Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.